Hey, welcome to this episode of the USL show. It is not just me, Kaylor Hodges. We will get into the normal show later. We're going to kind of open up on a serious note. Just going to go ahead, get ahead of it. Not going to hide from it at all. It was kind of brought to our attention yesterday on Monday that a comment was made on Kit season on the most recent episode that made try to make light of the Flint, Michigan water situation. And that's just something we don't do here. We don't stand for that kind of stuff. It is stuff that we take very, very seriously. Um, as kind of the main producer, it hurts that something like that got kind of slipped through the cracks. While Kit Season runs independently, edits independently, and produces independently, as kind of the main producer that oversees everything, that does fall on me. That is a huge part of what I do. And I'm really sorry that something like that, let alone made the cut, but B, ever was allowed to happen. So I'm so sorry about that. So we are taking steps to make sure that this doesn't happen again. The episode has already been edited and re-uploaded onto Spotify, Apple, and all those podcast players without the comment included. Kid season will no longer air on Protagonist. Will not happen. That was our choice, not Protagonist. That is a relationship that we care a lot about, and we do not want to damage that anymore. And last bit, or two more bits actually. Kid season is on probation from the USL show. They will still upload and live stream, but if there's even like a hint of something going off the rails of an unsavory comment, we're done with them. It's done. They have been aware of this. You are going to be aware of this. It's not something we stand for. And the last thing, we want to put our money where our mouth is, and we already have. If you are someone who is a patron, or if you are someone who sponsors the USL show, the month of March and February, your kind donations have gone to the shelter of flint.org, to that organization where they help out the homeless in the Flint, Michigan area. Every single penny is gone to them. They help people who are homeless. A lot of them are 10 and younger. A lot of them are homeless for the first time, and they help provide housing, meals, anything they can to help the people of Flint get back onto their feet. And if you want to help out as well, we put the link into the description straight to the donation page. But we want to show you that we are serious about this. It's not just a flippant statement. We care. And this is something we do not want to do. We hold ourselves to a higher standard. We care about the community that we built. We care about your community, and we really do care. I, again, am so sorry that this happened. And there's no real easy way to transition into the USL show. So we're just going to hit the music and just kind of get into this. Yeah, see you in a sec. All right. We are back. The USL show is back with actual matches on the field. It is great to be back. John, bold of you to wear the kit that you are after what happened, but we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, kind of bringing funeral dirge vibes to it with the Brooklyn FC kit today, but hey, figured why not?
Ryan, also a little bit bold of you to wear the kit that you're wearing today. As you can see, I'm not wearing one. How are you doing, buddy?
Doing well. The time change over the previous weekend really caught me off guard, as it does every year. So it's been a tough adjustment to get back to the change in daylight hours.
Phil, you and I are kitless. You look great, man. A little bit of tattoo showing. I honestly, you're rocking today.
It is amazing. It was warm here in Ohio for like the first time all year. I got out and actually got sun rays to hit my skin during the day, and actually considered like canceling my future appointments with my therapist. I think I'm healed.
I saw the craziest thing today. There were people in our pool, like in our community pool.
Wow.
I'm like, listen, I understand that like almost 80 degrees is warm, but I feel like that's not warm enough for the pool, but that's just me. Yeah.
You kind of got to do it. Like there's that one day where it's way too early, it gets really hot, and sometimes you give in to the instinct. I'm here for it.
Before we get into the action, can I be serious again? I want to be serious again. I just want to just throw it out there. This was our first Rowdies match week without Matt Cox, and I know a lot of people on the show have had a lot of just kind of conversations with him, and he truly was someone I considered a friend. He was good for a lot of things. Texting me whenever Tennessee beat Alabama, and it always made me mad. Texting me when Tampa Bay beat the Legion, and always immediately afterward asking me how I was doing. Not as a sports fan, but just as a human. Matt was a special human. I'm not going to be too man enough, or I'm not going to be too man to admit it. There was a lot of tears just kind of shed that day, just kind of thinking about everything that Matt and Unused Subs just kind of did for lower league soccer, but more importantly, what kind of Matt did as a friend.
Matt was an absolute pillar in the lower league soccer community. I think somebody who inspired a lot of us, along with the rest of the Unused Substitutes crew, to like try our hand at content creation, try our hand at joining this community and trying to have a voice. Every time I interacted with him over the years, he was nothing but warm and personable, one of the easiest people to talk to in the lower league community. The fact that the Rowdies put the MC on the captain's armband was an unbelievable gesture as well. Yeah, I mean, it's a huge loss, and I hope he rests in peace.
Yeah, Matt was one of the inspirations for me to get involved in covering USL. It inspired me to actually want to go back through and find the recording that we did from an old Tampa Bay Rowdies preview episode when he was on the USL show many years ago. And Matt was just the kindest person to talk to, and just someone who will be missed in the lower leagues soccer scene.
Yeah, I want to echo what everybody said and just say that Seriously Loco literally wouldn't exist without Matt blazing the trail with Unused Subs, and obviously his partners in crime. But I think they showed that even though podcasts and sort of new media, if you want to call it that, like weren't taken that seriously by a lot of places around the league, if you did it right, you would be taken seriously. And that just shows, I mean, the impact that they had on the Rowdies just goes to show like what a labor of love that was. And Matt definitely had a very, very long lasting impact on this community, and we'll never forget that.
Well, let's go ahead and get into kind of the conversations. Why don't we? A lot of fun stuff happened. The USL has officially kicked off, and boy, did it, because we had a good little listen, I'm trying to do producer stuff. It's not working for me. We had a fun match down in the retirement home of FC Naples. What most people thought that FC stood for, which was football club, what it actually stood for is fight club. As at the very end of the match is a 1-1 draw, Lalo Delgado goes to claim it, and it gets a little chippy where Dangler shows that he still has it from that U.S. Open Cup match against Miami all those years ago, if you remember that. And we end up having actual pushes, not handbags, real deal pushes. Not only is this a welcome to the league moment for Naples, but Chattanooga might be showing that they truly are Brexit ball that we talked about on the League One preview.
This was very much a physical game from the jump. I don't think there were two more direct sides that were trying to impose themselves over the entire weekend. I don't know if either one was especially effective either, if we're being real. So you could feel the frustration kind of building over the 90 minutes. You throw in the fact that Naples was packing that place out, sold out for their first ever home game, almost 5,000 people. The atmosphere was ripe for something to happen. And I mean, boy, they ended up giving those fans something to remember for the rest of their Naples supporting lives.
That offside flag on the final goal, or on what could have been the winner, I truly thought they had the fairy tale moment, like deep in stoppage time, but unfortunately it was not to be. That like quick fire double nearly happened, but yeah. All that being said, I do love a good, a little bit of fire to get things started for FC Naples. And this match will not go down as a classic, but I think the energy was certainly great. And like you said, the amount of fans in the stands just amped up the energy a lot.
Yeah, I mean, 28 fouls combined from both of these teams from this match. So it was an incredibly physical game. But even though the equalizing goal had to come from the penalty spot, I was still very encouraged from what you saw from FC Naples. Here, they came up against a Chattanooga team that, per American Soccer Analysis, only generated 0.24 XG on the game. And to do so and get a result that Naples did in front of the capacity crowd that they had, it was a really encouraging sign moving forward. And this week they'll be tested by a much tougher side in Forward Madison.
I mean, I gotta just kind of ask the question. We talked to Eamon Zayed, which if you did not listen to that episode, you absolutely should. Like, dude was giving full tactical analysis for every single team, kind of crazy. But he did say that this Chattanooga team was going to be better than their roster suggests. And this is an expansion side with Naples. I understand this. And Naples, while have promising looks, did not look kind of amazing either. But honestly, in my heart of hearts, I really thought this Chattanooga side was going to defend for about 80 minutes and then just die. And they didn't fully do that. Yes, they give up the penalty, but they looked a lot more competent than I thought they would.
What I will say is they played twice as high a share of long passes as any other team in League One over the weekend. They, to me at least, looked like they didn't really have a sense of what they wanted to do in possession. Naples felt like the aggressor mostly. That's not to say that Chattanooga won't figure it out and won't exceed. I mean, let's be real, I put them last in my power rankings for a reason. There's a chance they exceed that. But I don't know if this week one match was necessarily making me feel hunky-dory about their prospects.
Fair enough. Any other thoughts on this match other than, I mean, look, there were good pushes. Can I just talk about the initial push with Dangler? And honestly, how good the fallback was. There was no bracing themselves. That was fully committed to the fall. I could never.
That's an art, man. Like, you got to be graceful to do that. That's why these guys are athletes.
And as the chat's saying, May 14th will be the return fixture for this one at a 12 noon Eastern time kickoff, which in May is just fairly interesting because I'm not sure if that's a summer camp game or they just had it scheduled for the weekday.
It's high noon.
Match. I need another mimosa match. Any final thoughts on Chattanooga before we go down to probably the shock of the weekend? No. Okay. Dallas Trinity take on top of the table, Brooklyn FC. And Brooklyn had it taken to them 6-0 to the Trinity. There's been a little bit of slow start for Brooklyn since the long break. Meanwhile, Dallas has come out like on fire. I guess I want to open up the question first. Did the break hurt Brooklyn more, or is it a situation of the break helping Dallas?
I think Dallas showed flashes of being this team before the break. Obviously, that was with Sam Meza in the midfield. Things have changed. They got Misimo in there. But to me, like, we always knew Dallas had this in them. Brooklyn, on the other hand, feels like they lost some of the organization. They didn't feel as steady. They were so good about organizing the 4-1-4-1 in the press, controlling territory, and winning knockdowns in the middle of the park. Dallas didn't let them do any of that. Credit to Pauline McDonald for some of the changes Dallas made formationally, tactically. But Brooklyn just seemed to step off. And I think, 3 games winless at this point, if I'm remembering correctly?
Yes.
A little bit concerning for their status on top of the table.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
it seemed like extremely disjointed from Brooklyn in a way that we just like haven't seen this year. And Dallas, it was, I mean, everything they touched turned to gold in a certain way, but they were on top from the very beginning, and they just never let go. Also, an interesting side note about this game is that I don't know if anyone was aware that one of the Sickos committee, if anyone follows that, was present for this match and was like, "Is this normal?" And it was like, very much not. This is not what people were thinking would happen.
Yeah, I think that one of the Sickos committees actually lives in the Texas area, so it was really cool to see that recognition on a wider scale. But I mean, we talk about Brooklyn having a slow start. They've now gone 3.5 hours since their last scored goal, since the restart of play. And honestly, this match really kind of reminded me of when Nottingham Forest had beaten Brighton earlier in the league this season 7-0. And it just kind of had that structure of everything that Nottingham Forest and then everything that Dallas did in this match just turned to gold. I mean, on the 8 shots on target, 6 of them found the back of the net, with Brooklyn just having the 1 shot on target for the game. You'll be curious to see the adjustment that Brooklyn has moving forward with Fort Lauderdale. And then on March 19th, they get to play Dallas again at home.
This, by the way, I just want to read out the goal scorers. Allie Thornton, of course, goals, obviously. You got Misimo, who gets one later. You got, Ogagu, I believe is how you pronounce it. You get Shepard, and then the one, of course, I've been desperately waiting for, of course, Cameron Lancaster to score. She was with California Storm last year, and she was one of their key players. And I kind of fired off the tweet last year, but seeing Cameron Lancaster score, I was just like, this is such a layup. I have to throw it out there. Like, this is just awesome.
We've all said it before. Lexington dropped the ball so hard by not signing both Cameron Lancasters.
Yeah. The cross-promotional opportunities are just off the charts. The run that Misimo made for her goal was like absolutely insane as well. Just wanted to call that out because that was one of my favorites of the 6.
She was unbelievably good in that kind of left half space pocket, roaming in zone 14. The way she was able to move the ball from side to side so quickly, never gave Brooklyn a minute to find their shape. I thought she was great claiming second balls. You saw why it was a big deal that Dallas poached her from the NWSL pipeline. But overall, yeah, like a complete team performance. They ended up putting up more than 3 expected goals and holding Brooklyn to 0.4, like a drubbing, no matter how you slice it. Oh, and shout out to our boy Riley James, Goals TV, United Soccer Lounge, live on the pitch, seen on Peacock, interviewing Thornton, McDonald, and Amanda Vandervoort. That's, yeah, I know at least I have been on, Kayler's been on, so shout out to him.
It's awesome.
Yep. And of course, from this match, Dallas puts himself with the best goal differential in the league and crucially opens up a 4-point gap over Tampa Bay Sun for that final playoff spot.
Any final thoughts before we go on to the League 1? Well, League 1, not really League 1. They're not the top one. Anyway, you know what I'm saying. All right, let's go ahead and start off with a little bit of tactics show. Let's go down to Statesboro, Georgia.
Tormenta and Richmond faced off in the League 1 opener on Friday night, and I was very impressed by Tormenta's ability to play directly through the midfield and feature their forward line in a very fluid 4-2-4 setup. You're seeing here Sebastian Vivas, the main striker, dropping in, trying to contest a play, and Aaron Walker, one of the center midfielders in a two-man pivot, immediately looking upfield when he gets possession. You see what that's liberating. Mason Tunbridge, who is almost playing a hold-up number 10 role, is able to receive from that direct pass, turn, and make use of a run from Vivas that's filling the far lane, distracting defenders, and opening up a spot for Tormenta to get a shot on goal. This is open play, it's fluidity, and it's what this team did best and ought to look for this season.
While we will get into Tormenta's side of this because what they did was impressive, more so impressive is what Richmond did. 4 goals in the first game. I mean, it was, you see 1-0. What was it? 1-0, 2-0, or 1-1, and then 2-1, and 2-2, and then 3-2. And it's like, what is going on? And then you only get 1 goal in the second half. Super, what are we doing? Like, we got to score more goals. We got to get back into this. The second half is so boring, apparently. But, I mean, Hayden Anderson getting started early. And then, like you kind of mentioned it, John, Vivas looked fantastic, not to be outdone by Mason Turnbridge, though. It was a fantastic opener to the men's professional season.
On the Richmond side of things, because I think you're right to spotlight them, this is a club that, if not leading the league in possession last year, nearly did so. And they only held about a third of the ball in this game. They were willing to let Tormenta kind of run it out with their 4-2-4, really let Reed Steffen and Nyanjo overextend on the wings. And as soon as they got the ball back, they were driving through Seufert as this pivot player in the middle, letting him either work it to him, Anderson and Fitch, find Darwin Espinal on the left. It was a different approach for Richmond, but it felt like the evolution you wanted to see from this team over the offseason. Obviously, I highlighted in the tactics show, I liked a lot of the ideas that Tormenta had. They lacked the balance to really pull it off at the end of the day against a good or organized Richmond team that returned a lot of players. But Tormenta's going to make noise if they can figure out how to maintain that spark while adding a little bit more defensive solidity to their shape.
I thought the precision that Richmond showed in their approach was really impressive because it's easy to sort of soak up pressure, but making those counters count is not the simplest thing. And Espinal in particular was just he was an absolute menace. As soon as he got to the byline, it was just over. And they were just very sharp in how they opened Tormenta up. I think Richmond will come up against teams where they find it tougher to do this for sure this year. I think, like you said, John, the balance for Tormenta just made this a little bit easier on Richmond than it probably should have been. But overall, like, I was really impressed with how Richmond were able to execute their game plan because, like John was saying, like early doors, it was like, I was like, Tormenta's about to run them off the park. Like the way that their attacking movement was, it just looked like it was going to be very one-sided. And credit to Richmond for executing their game plan extremely well.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at a Tormenta team who nearly had 500 accurate passes from this one match. It was very much a match that they controlled possession-wise at 70%, but Richmond, for the first time since July 2022, scored 4 goals in a USL match that they won. So it's been a long time since we've seen a Richmond performance of this magnitude and on this scale. And I do at least want to give a shout out that they at least helped me cash my first USL bet of the season in the first half, no less. So very happy day for myself and for the Richmond kickers faithful.
Just one thing, and I understand not all the shots from Tormenta were threatening, but the difference that Sneddon has made for Richmond, like, he has shored up a lot of the issues. You mentioned it, Ryan. They would score goals because, I mean, they have arguably one of the best, if not the best, forward line in USL League One when you're looking at name power alone, right? It's incredible. And you mentioned Espinal, Phil. There's obviously Terzaghi, who is just him. You had Chandler O'Dwyer, who was great. You had Seufert start. That's a great lineup. And they're going to score goals, but can a defense hold up? In this match, they did. But, John, I kind of want to pivot. Let's look at Tormenta. They looked again, you mentioned the tactics show. The middle of the park was a lot more solid than I thought it would be. I didn't think that's where the strength was. I mean, I was looking at Taylor Gray and saying he's going to be the superstar on this team, and they didn't need him to be. They looked great in the middle of the field.
You think about Aaron Walker and Gabriel Cabral and that pivot, both of them very clean on the ball, good in how they were receiving, how they were turning when they got passes coming their way. The progressivity they had and the spark of that forward line just made a lot of sense. And I think Tunbridge was a key in terms of almost the hold-up play he was offering at some moments, but mixing in the ability to make the runs over the top. This is going to be a very diverse attack with a lot of outlets. Obviously, there needed to be more of a defensive presence. I don't think Cabral and Walker had the chemistry down yet, which isn't a shock this early in the season. I know Cabral in particular was kind of late coming into camp, was in Brazil for quite a while. That'll improve. I wonder how long a leash does Ian Cameron give it before he starts to mix things up.
Any final thoughts on this League One match before we go on to the championship?
Cabral being back at Tormenta is crazy. I'm shocked that someone didn't snag him from Miami.
Crazy.
Because he was held hostage there last season. So,
any thoughts? All right. Well, before we go on to the championship, this championship segment is being brought to you by Equipped Studios. We are super excited to announce that we are sponsored by Equipped Studios. Hopefully this week my microphone doesn't unplug, because I want to tell you all about the customized kits that you can get for your supporters group. And Austin's someone who's made stuff for clubs who are in USL League 2, who are in the W League, and UPSL. This is one of my favorite kits. It feels awesome, by the way. Like, it's very comfy. It does not feel cheap. It's not harsh. It's just very soft and very good moisture wicking. I use it to work out on the few times that I do that, like once a week. And it is significantly cheaper than the big brands. Like $40 to make the kit. You pay $40 unless you use our code and tell them that the USL show sent you. Then you get $35. But why would you do that? Hey, maybe you're a Sunday League player and your team needs some new kits. Go to Equip Studios. Austin is a Sunday League player himself. He doesn't want to play in anything that he doesn't want to wear himself. Maybe your club came out with a kit that you don't absolutely love. Hey, go out there and take matters into your own hands. Get your SG a new kit. And eventually later on, the USL show kits. That's who's making them this year. If you want to help send us up to Portland, Maine, you should absolutely do that. And if you're someone who's a little bit smaller, these kits will fit you. If you're someone who's a bit bigger, they got 6XL, baby. They got some for every single size for a cheap cost. Help us, help him, help you. Check out equipstudios.com. All right.
There is nothing like Kaler playing a little bit of free jazz on an ad read. That's
just going freestyling.
I have a somewhat script. I sometimes stick to it. Sorry, Austin. Let's go ahead and get into the championship, where Charleston takes on Louisville City, and Louisville City comes out on top. But if I'm being really honest here, I feel like the last goal does not do Charleston justice, because they were, I don't know if 2-1 is a fully deserved result for Louisville. Not to say that Louisville was bad, but it felt like both teams were just really even head to head the entire time.
I tend to lean the way that Louisville was the better of the two sides. Obviously, the red card kind of throws a wrench in things, but for so much of this match, I was impressed with the defensive approach. You think about Lou City and you think about a team that's very aggressive in the press, and you certainly saw that, especially in the counter press when you got Goodrum and Jansen Wilson and Taylor Davila involved towards the right side. That was great. But facing off against Charleston build, Lou City was almost happy to just let Aaron Malloy get his touches, and they were focused on shape and denying him the ability to pass upfield. They were very narrow, very compact, not only in terms of the front line, but from back line to front line, giving up very little space in the midfield. And Charleston didn't have a good response to that for a majority of the game. When Ben Pierman started to let Juan Torres do his thing, kind of roaming centrally, getting touches in a number 10 kind of space in complement to Emilio Icaza, you started to see Charleston get sharper. But Lou City got what they always get with the Ray Serrano goal. Very physical. You're focusing on winning the ball back in dangerous areas. I love the approach from the jump, as I just explained. Obviously, these teams are going to be dead even every time they play. This feels like if they played 10 times, they'd split 5-5. Feels like a just result given all of the context.
I do love that the quality of the top of the Eastern Conference is such that like this very, very talented Lou City side in Charleston feels like they need to sit back a little bit and make sure that they play structured and organized and can't go play like high flying football, because I think what Ben Pierman maybe set out or maybe said by like playing this particular lineup is, I think Aaron Malloy and Husu can beat you in midfield, like can beat Zach Duncan and Taylor Davila in midfield, which is crazy, like an amazing battle. And Danny Cruz was like, I'm not going to play that game, essentially. Like, we're going to play an entirely different game and let you kind of crash against us. And we're going to then hit you on the break. And they just showed, I think, like, one, it showed the level of ability that is in at the top of the East. Like, these teams are just very, very talented and good. But it also showed the little bit of tactical, like the chess match that was being played here by these coaches. And I think on balance, Danny Cruz like wins this round of Pierman Cruz. Will it, be similar when Charleston visits Louisville? We'll see. All in all, I do think the red card was harsh. So I think overall, like, that was harsh on Charleston, and it was especially cruel that it is essentially like a goalkeeping error that is the last, that allows the last goal. Given that wasn't really like how the match had gone up to that point. It was very, very cleanly played. But, I won't begrudge Louisville coming away with all 3 points, because I do think that they played a very, very good game and executed a strong game plan.
Yeah, and even prior to the red card, you still had Louisville out shooting Charleston 4-2 in terms of shots on target for this one. This was actually Louisville's first time that they actually got a win in Charleston since August 2019. So it will be interesting to see how this series, which has typically been dominated by the home team in years past, how it returns back when Charleston visits Louisville in August of later this season.
Phil, you kind of mentioned it. Ben Pierman said, our holding midfields, arguably the best holding midfield duo in the league. I would, and I yes, I'm biased. I don't get into the weeds that much, but I think they could outplay a lot of MLS teams holding midfield duos. I mean, Malloy and Husu is just that good. Maybe I'm totally off kilter here, and I understand that Ben Pierman has a style, but I am so accustomed to a Ben Pierman team being a chameleon and transforming themselves into whatever you're bad at. Like, they are so good at just tinkering and just being whatever you're not good at. But this kind of felt like the first time in a long time that Ben Pierman kind of pressed an issue. Like, kind of just kept pressing it. And I don't want to say that he got totally outmanaged. That's not what I'm saying. But I can't remember the last time that I can sit there and say, Ben Pierman was not the better manager on the night. Was it close? Absolutely. I thought it was neck and neck, but it doesn't happen very much, which I do think more speaks volumes to where Danny Cruz is and not where Ben Pierman is.
I thought it was interesting that Pierman went with the halftime changes, like bringing on Douglas Martinez, bringing on Nate Dos Santos at left back. Certainly Dos Santos, I think, added a little bit of extra verve that was needed in comparison to Chris Allen, and that helped Charleston's cause throughout the back half of the game. I don't know if I would necessarily go as far to say one manager outdid the other. You're valid to think so, Kaylor, but this felt like a match where Husu was very much figuring out his positioning, didn't have the clear chemistry. there's a reason that Martinez and Klein split minutes. Like, they're getting used to the battery system. It's almost a mulligan managerially for me, frankly, because of those extenuating circumstances in the Low Country.
And there was a moment early on where I'm fairly certain it was Malloy plays a through ball towards Cal Jennings that like Cal is very unlucky. It gets kind of caught under his feet. And it's one of those like rhythm things that, again, like as that's figured out, the idea of Aaron Malloy being able to feed passes into Cal Jennings is an extremely scary prospect for the rest of the league, I would say. So they were a bit of luck, probably, you know, away from creating a very, very big chance early on with Cal Jennings, and that obviously would change the shape of the game at that point. So who knows? But yeah, overall, I think, you know, Louisville just about got it right, and they got the bounce at the end as well.
Yeah, and if you're Charleston, this match is early enough in the season that you can not forget the result entirely, but you can write it off as just the red card was the red card and move on to the next match ahead, which you have no time to rest because Rhode Island comes to town.
And we will predict that at the very end. Last kind of thing on this, and it is on the Louisville City side. There's just something really, I guess, just kind of nice to see with this team where they are playing old faces of the USL and a lot of new guys. Like, despite only being like, 22, Ray Serrano's been around for 7 years. Philip Goodrum has been around for 5 years at this point. Arturo Ordonez feels like he's been around forever. Tosh has been around forever. Kyle Adams has been around forever. If I'm looking between the starting 11, really, Zach Duncan is the newest face here, and he really established himself last year. You see Adrian Perez, who, again, feels like he's been around forever. Sam Gleadle is a super sub for them, which feels insane to me for what Sam Gleadle is. Kevon Lambert, sorry, is, again, been around forever. That the fact that this is a team that is not just playing the old hits, but are playing established players that we have grown to know their game inside and out. I just think that's so cool. I just think it is so cool. So, any final thoughts on this match? No. All right. Well, let's go down to our championship tactics show. And we are going to get into a little bit of Switchbacks El Paso.
Wants to recreate last year's title form, they'll need to figure out a way to recreate Ronaldo Damas's scoring. We saw a chance at doing so this weekend with the fluidity of their midfield. 4 attacking-minded midfielders hovered around the hub that is Juan Tejada as a hold-up striker and really showed how the switchbacks can evolve in the 2025 season. Here you're seeing Tejada grinding in the right half space, getting touches, and making sure that those midfielders have the availability to push ahead and create chances in behind. Here it's Marco Micheletto, ostensibly a center midfielder, making that key run into the seam to replace Tejada as he holds up play. Ultimately, the result is going to be a penalty for Colorado Springs, evidence of how this team can grow in the new season.
We're going to, of course, start with our residential El Paso guy, which is Phil, which I have 2 questions for you on this. 2 minutes in, Marco Micheletto scores on you. How close were you to a crash out? 2, like, this team looks a lot better than the team that we were not getting updates about in preseason. Like, this is, I mean, they look good.
Yeah, I think I was definitely close to a crash out because I was like, there's no way that the one thing that we said, hey, switchbacks are going to definitely try to exploit, like, got exploited in 30 seconds. That they figured it out immediately. That was the one. So it definitely had me close. What I would say is I was trying to work out just how much of this was switchbacks getting the goal and sitting off versus like switchbacks not really knowing what to do. I thought it was more of the former than the latter. Like, it felt like for long stretches of the first half, they were essentially declining to play. in favor of like just giving El Paso the ball. That being said, after my initial frustration was wearing off, Locomotive's attacking patterns do make a lot more sense than they did last year, and I can at least see like the semblance of a plan of how the ball is meant to get into the net. I think where it, and this is where I'll plug at USL Stat on Blue Sky, because all of those analytics that you're used to seeing in, I think like people have seen in maybe different accounts and stuff like that. Over on Blue Sky, he like provides a bunch of graphics and all this stuff. It's really great. So the pass map of El Paso shows to me like what they still need to figure out, which is Amando Moreno knows exactly what he needs to do. And that link up with him and Ricky Ruiz and Frank DeRoma as the outlet in midfield, that all made a lot of sense and it all looked very good. But once you started talking about Beto Avila and Tumi Moshibane and how they were meant to link up on the right side of things with Quezada, it didn't make as much sense, and almost none of the attack went through that side. And it was because like their average positions were straight up like on top of each other. And so there is some figuring out that needs to be done on the right side. But I mean, you can do a lot worse than having Amando Moreno as a focal point. Ricky Ruiz was very active down the left, and I thought had a very good game. And Frank DeRoma was unbelievable. Like he was fantastic. He was a lot of the reason. Like Robert Coronado, I think, was a steady presence for Locomotive towards the end of last season, but DeRoma has that capability to receive the ball with his back to goal, turn people, bring other players into the game, and his ability to run. He actually got pointed out by the referee and got several switchbacks players booked because they had keyed on DeRoma as like their press trigger, and they were just kicking him the second he got the ball. And the referee actually, this is credit to the referee because he actually noticed this and pointed out that the next guy who fouls him, rather than like, oh, you fouled a bunch of people, but it's like this guy's getting fouled so much that the next guy who fouls him is going to get booked. And so that actually, he was pivotal to what they were doing on the night. All that being said, Locomotive improved for sure. I think the frailty is still there from like sort of what they struggled with at times last season. But I think the structure and what I saw like over the course of 90 minutes was definitely encouraging compared to most of last season.
100% on the El Paso side of things. I was impressed with the relationship DeRoma and Coronado had in the press as well. DeRoma really getting in people's faces, tracking quite tightly, limiting what Colorado Springs could do as they tried to build forward. And this shape-wise for Colorado Springs, like Zach Zandy was playing the 6, Micheletto and Anthony Fontana were kind of these dual yields, number 10s in the middle, but neither felt like they could get going outside of that one sequence 30 seconds into the match, which is a testament to El Paso, who would not have been that solid at this point last season. And again, Ruiz and Amando Moreno really killing it. I think the use of Beto Avila as a little bit more of a hold-up centric forward is good. Not if Toomey is the guy next to him on the right. So something to figure out there, maybe Andy Cabrera. But yeah, good stuff. I think Colorado Springs learned a lesson about how to see out a game. Early in the season, you don't have Speedy Williams this time around. Akeem Ward is getting used to the right side again. A lot of factors combining for them that just didn't pan out. Ultimately, though, I think I feel good about both of these teams leaving this match.
Yeah, I mean, El Paso coming away from this match, out shooting the reigning champions at home and getting a result, especially in the manner that they did with the last second equalizer from Wilmer Cabrera Jr. of all players, was just a kind of phenomenal setting for an El Paso team that really had a challenging season last year and really needed this offseason and this opening game, which I had mentioned in one of my previous articles, that this opening period of games is like really crucial for setting the standard for Locomotive moving forward. But yeah, it was an incredibly encouraging performance, and I was thrilled for the last minute equalizer because it meant another prediction had came true.
John, go ahead.
The last thing I was going to say is that I think for the Colorado Springs side, if Yosuke Hanya was like slightly sharper on the night, they probably could have done more damage. There were a handful of times where he took up really good positions, but either like couldn't get on the ball or like maybe took a loose touch to where the ball got cleared. And there were a handful of times where I'm thinking like, oh, this is big trouble. And then he got booked for diving as well, which was maybe a little bit harsh. I would say because if he had gone down at the initial challenge from Aquay, then he may have actually earned a penalty, but he went down like well after the fact, and unfortunately got the booking. But I think he's going to be really key, or whoever is occupying like those wide positions is going to be so key for Colorado Springs. And if they have an off night where you're only going to have a handful of chances to get on the end of something, like he would just need to be sharper, and I don't think it was exactly his night.
John, I want to kind of bring this up. When you were looking at Colorado Springs versus Rhode Island, and even more in the postseason, you had brought up Juan Tejada as the 10, and that was kind of your big secret weapon for Colorado Springs and why they would win it all. Now he's playing as the 9, and I guess the official name would be a false 9, right? I understand there's a term, but him playing up top, but essentially just being the hold up guy and just kind of spraying the ball everywhere. Him being the guy to hold it up and distribute and essentially be a 10 and letting everybody else kind of just overflood, like just kind of overwhelm their back line. Is that enough for Colorado Springs going forward? Or do you think they do need an out and out number 9?
I mean, the question right now is, can Justin Dillon be that guy? At this stage, given the way the league has changed, I don't know if the answer to that is yes. Frankly, I don't think Tejada did enough false 9 things. Like, he kind of felt caught between roles for this switchbacks team in a way where if you really just let him commit to that, if you kind of go legitimately strikerless, let Hanya make the runs behind, try to let Levante Johnson stay wider a little bit more, that feels like the best way for this team to play. I don't know, given the mix in the midfield, given the way they want to build out, if that makes a whole lot of sense. The easy answer is go buy a striker, frankly, but we'll see what gives for James Chambers.
Will Kyle Adams do? Or Charlie Adams, sorry. Will that do enough?
I mean, he's a good midfield addition, but we're back to square one with the mix up top for my taste.
Fair enough. Any final thoughts on this match?
Is this championship stuff in general too?
We have one
We'll
last
circle back to
championship
it.
thing, but
Okay, go for it.
Taylor's got one, and then I've got
That's
some.
right. That's right.
Yeah.
okay. So let's go ahead hit the last little bit of championship thing, which is the kind of corner kick breakdown, which I'm going to go ahead pull up right now. All right, if it's going to play. Can y'all hear it?
No. Well, 2 for 3 ain't
Nice.
bad on the audio.
Yeah. All right. I'll try to pull it up later. I will see what it can do. In the meantime, you guys do your thing. Bring us some championship stuff on. I'll try to fix this.
Well, Detroit City, I posted a bit about it today, but with the caveat that Miami looked absolutely abysmal, like one of the most disorganized defensive performances I can remember in recent vintage in the USL, Detroit was great. The possession game, the way they worked through Chapman and Pulisic and Cedeno in the midfield, the off-ball movement was stunning, constant interchange across the board. I don't want to get out over my skis with Detroit, but if they keep playing like this, it doesn't matter what defense they're going up against. They had the tempo, they had the instant chemistry, just incredibly impressive stuff on top of a very solid classic Detroit City defensive showing.
All right. I figured it out. So give me just 1 second, Phil. Goodness gracious Maybe not. Here we go. Kaler's Corner Kick Market, where we are going to be breaking down some set piece goals. And Detroit City has some clever design and a simple mistake by Miami that leads to a goal for Detroit City. So let's go ahead and break this down. Let's look at our starting formation. We have 5 players on the back post, where we have 2 in the back, 2 in the front, and 1 player in the middle, kind of creating this box formation. Our 2 players in the back kind of take a little step backwards to create space. And as they begin their run forward, there's a player who's at the top of the box, takes out 2 players. Think about like a mesh concept in American football where it beats man to man. You take out 2 players at once. Now, here's where the mistake is. Miami's player leaves his front post to try to attack this ball. Unfortunately, he misses, which leaves a wide open goal for Michael Bryant to slot it away at the near post, right where that Miami player was sitting. And it leads to a 1-0 lead for Detroit City FC.
1, great job, Kaler.
Yeah.
Terrific analysis. 2, I love both of us doing the short form, like this sub-minute YouTube short style, TikTok-y, whatever. Good stuff.
Yeah, I do enjoy it a lot more, just being short and simple. Sometimes I get a little freaked out because I think I talk too much, but it's fine. The biggest thing I have to say about the corner kick routine that they did, the amount of times I had to listen to the Miami announcer say, there is no X's and O's, just willpower by Michael Bryant to get in front of his man, I was going to absolutely lose my mind. If you go back and watch it, he says there's no X's and O's here. I was just like, oh, yes, there is. Yes, there is. It's just harder to see because it happens so fast. I get it. But it's really simple set piece design. I mean, you have 2 runners, and that's it. Everybody else is a pin or a distraction. There's a guy at the back post who is the front left of the front of the box, who all he is doing is just moving side to side and just because they have a guy just facing him the entire time, just being a distraction. 2 guys who are just pinning. One person is just blocking the goalkeeper, making it harder for him to see. And then you have a guy just in the middle of it causing chaos, making 2 guys run into him, leaving Bryant open. And of course, if Miami's player doesn't leave the near post, chances are that ball hits him square in the face and it's cleared away. But that's what set pieces are supposed to do. They're supposed to cause confusion. And Miami, you mentioned it, John, on all fronts looked horrible. That's a ball that he's on the post. He doesn't have to go to the top of the 6-yard box to contest it. That player's already accounted for. He didn't have to do that. And that's the kind of discipline that Miami was lacking all night, and also got him a red card for their troubles.
It's like the GTA San Andreas soft shit. Here we go again.
It was.
I will say, John, I laughed at your the post of the Kaler Corner Kicks Market photo that you put on Blue Sky.
You have no idea. I was looking for the best farmers market stand I could find on the internet.
One USL championship thought I had, if we're going to go away from a bad Miami, was that an ex-Miami person, Antonio Nocerino, got a 1-0 victory for Tampa Bay. I know we had a lot of reservations about Nocerino's appointment in Las Vegas, and it wasn't without its difficulties that you had Tampa Bay with an absolute just – they pestered the Las Vegas goal for this entire match, but the fact that Las Vegas were to keep the clean sheet and walk away with all 3 points headed into the very big Dennis Sanchez derby this week, it has a little bit of positive feelings from Las Vegas Lights right now, and their kids look great for the season.
My last championship thought is the acronym LADS. This one's for the lads. Loudon always does this shit. Why I feel bad for you, Kaler, because Loudon starts the season out, starting the season off against Loudon is such a cursed chalice. It's insane. They will not be this good the rest of the year. They played probably the perfect match. They were unbelievable. And I'm like, there's no way that this is what Loudon is. I simply won't believe it.
Abubakar was awesome, by the way. Awesome. He was just lightning in a bottle. Legion was also horrible. They get their goal. Jake Roof, love that guy. He's the best. But other than a moment of magic, it was awful. And that's not to take anything away from Loudon, who absolutely forced the mistake. if Legion were allowed to build up to the middle and just have space on the ball in the middle of the park, I do feel like the game goes differently. But you could kind of tell that no one really pressed them centrally like a Coach Ryan does. And it shocked them. And you could tell that an Enzo Martinez was missing. But also, if you're relying on one guy to be your saving grace, especially, I love Enzo, dude's like 36. You can't rely on him to be around forever unless he's Matt Van Okel, who's just never going to retire. And like, I think that Loudon forced a lot of mistakes and Legion had zero answers for it. It was fascinating. And honestly, I wasn't even mad at the end of it. I was just, again, fascinated by what was going on. It was like, why is this not working? Why are things not kind of meshing together? And it took about 40 minutes for Legion to understand kind of the press that was coming at them from the midfield. And by that point, it was too late. They tried to play out of the back. And when you have a young player, young 16-year-old like Rami Zamuda, he looked amazing on the ball, but there was no one to pass to. There was no one in the midfield dropping in deep to do anything. And then on top of that, Dave Trejo have going out with concussion protocol. That's not how you want to start the season. But honestly, I was more impressed with how well Loudon played, and they forced Legion to look bad. Don't get me wrong, Legion looked bad, but they forced the issue. It wasn't like they did it on their own accord.
There was no match in week one where it felt like one team didn't have the sauce and the other team had it fully figured out. The Legion gave far too much time to Loudon whenever Loudon was able to possess the ball. And Loudon took advantage to the fullest extent. The ball movement was slick. It was fast and crisp. They were working to Awuwa, working into Abakora up that left side. It felt like what Ryan Martin envisioned when he kept most of this squad together. And you're right to mention the press as well, Kaylor. I thought Loudon was so organized defensively. And yes, the fact that Torres and Hernandez Foster didn't really have the spatial relationship made a difference. But credit to Loudon. Ryan Martin set this team up. They knew where they needed to be. They knew what their triggers were. Great performance from this team that, let's be honest, I think we all had a handful of doubts about. This makes you feel good about Loudon as a legit playoff team this year.
If the season ended today, Loudon would be the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference, let the record show.
The people's champ. I mean, there was a part of me that was upset that Legion lost, but also I think is not just a secret at this point. I am just heavily rooting for Loudon at all times. Just heavily rooting for them.
I won't out who said this, but I did get a text during this game of, boy, Kayla's going to have split loyalties with this result. So you're really living this up.
It's true. The people's champ. Yeah. So are we ready to get into some predictions?
I've got one more shout to the boys from Westchester playing Greenville, holding them to a draw. Fun, good game on Saturday. Love to see it.
I was going to mention Greenville coming up because, hey, it is a battle of the belts as we get into our predictions segment where there might be a belt changing hands, and it might be handed to Ronaldinho as he is going to be in attendance for this match. Turns out when we talked about it earlier, Ronaldinho does know where Greenville, South Carolina is. Is that because they asked him to come out this time? Maybe. But he's going to be there for the groundbreaking for Greenville Triumph's stadium. And he's allegedly going to be at the match, which I kind of put it out on Twitter and Blue Sky that, really the highlight of his career is going to be meeting our good friend, Giovanni Cagnas. That really is the highlight of Ronaldinho's career, clearly. So I'm excited for this one, that we are going to see what this Union Omaha team looks like in their title defense, where they get a big central midfield presence and a big forward presence, where a lot of the holes that Eamon Zayed rightfully pointed out seem to be kind of filled. But Greenville came out and looked great against Westchester. Westchester had, like you mentioned, a little bit of issues. They're an expansion team, but they're a dang good one. And Greenville looked like the more mature squad, as they rightfully are. So let's go ahead and get into the predictions. John, let's start with you.
I've got Greenville taking this one. I think it matters that they've got some real match minutes under their legs already. This is a squad that, despite adding some big names, still has some continuity and played a system that was pretty much identical to how they ended 2024. Yes, it's a short turnaround, but I think being at home for both legs of it matters. Omaha has some question marks. Where does Prosper fit in? What do you do with that front line with Amici and Wamri? I think Cello is going to be awesome in the central midfield at some point, but does he slot in already? I see this game being low scoring and somewhat defensive overall because I think Omaha is organized at the back and can counter Greenville's strength quite well, especially if Greenville wants to kind of work expansively through Evans on the right. But yeah, something about this is just leaning Greenville for me in the end.
Ryan?
I've actually picked Omaha on this one. They are weirdly on a streak of 4 consecutive wins against the Greenville Triumph right now. So I think Omaha go into Greenville and make it 5 in a row against the Triumph and spoil the party. And Ronaldinho's birthday is actually in 10 days from today when he'll turn 45. So it will be an unhappy early birthday gift.
Phil?
I'm going for Union Omaha on this one as well. I think they just come out of the gate strong, and I'm also taking a new tack this year, which is I am waiting for predictions to come in, and then I am picking against like the crowd so that I can pick up points in almost every matchup, because this is a pure numbers game at this point and I can't do worse than I did last year. So I am also playing some of the averages here to try and gain points on people.
By the way, there is a change to the way we do these predictions. We went from 10. We are now down to 6. We'll take 2 from Super League, 2 from the Championship, 2 from League One. And our prediction segment now will only have 3 matches to predict. If there is especially loaded match or loaded week where there's like 3 great matches in the Championship, we'll be flexible and add 1 or 2. But we're going to try to stick to that 6 pretty strong. For me, if you are watching the USL show for the first time, thank you. There's been a whole lot of new subscribers. Go ahead, hit the subscribe button if you're on YouTube. We're trying to get to 1,000 before July 25th. I don't pick draws, even when I think there is one, which I do. So I'm going to go with the home team for the graphic, and I'm going to say Ronaldinho has an amazing birthday and coming up in 10 days. Apparently. Thank you, Ryan. And I think that what Greenville did in getting actual match minutes together, going against the Union Omaha team, which looks great on paper, but they have yet to play a real match, honestly, without Dolabella, which I think is a huge deal. And yes, they have added some firepower. They have replaced well in the midfield, but it's never played together. This Greenville team has this year. I am going to go with the Greenville Triumph. John, we're going to go back down to the Low Country where we have another rematch because, hey, the USL schedule makers were really in their bag this year. They said, Charleston, what's the hardest beginning of the season we could give you? Well, let's give you Rhode Island. Why not? And this is a Rhode Island team that haven't really, what did they do? I'm trying to remember. Did they play last week? They did not, right? No. I didn't think so because I was like, am I trying to recall a match? Did not happen. So they're a little fresher. Charleston's going, but they have a week. Charleston has a week together and a week coming off a loss. Are they going to be extra motivated? John, who do you have?
They might be motivated, but I think it's going to end up as a draw. I think matchup wise, we obviously saw last time around, this was the dead middle of the JJ Williams heater. I think Rhode Island made some really keen adjustments mid-game and was able to shut down Aaron Malloy pretty effectively. Can they repeat that while they're integrating Maxi? I know there are some injury issues at the back potentially for Rhode Island. Feels like this will be a fascinating matchup to see what Pierman does, but I think it ends splitting the points in the end.
Ryan?
Yeah, I picked a draw on this one as well. Both regular season matchups from the teams last year was a draw, including 1-0. So I have the points being split, and for the first time since October of last season, Charleston goes 2 consecutive home games in the regular season without a victory, including that 2 consecutive games from last year was also a draw against Rhode Island. That was the second game.
Phil?
I actually have Rhode Island squeaking out a win in this one again because I'm the only person who's picking Rhode Island, and so I could pick up some points here. But I think Rhode Island are going to be extremely strong this year. I like the chances of coming in, and they're going to present like a very different challenge for Charleston than Louisville. I like the chaos that their front line can cause against what is a very good Charleston defense. So yeah, I'm going for Rhode Island, and maybe a little bit of a 2-game crisis down in Charleston. They'll be fine.
I think they'll be fine as well because I think they're going to get a win versus Rhode Island. We talked a lot about Husu and Malloy and just like what they can do as a holding midfield pairing. And when you have the best two holding midfielders in the league playing together, you can slow down a lot of the attacks. You can slow down almost everything. And their back line is still fantastic. And we talked about it before. Cal Jennings at some point is just going to start scoring and not stop. I don't think that his heater is going to start in the second game of the season, but he does have to get off the mark. And this feels like the kind of match that's going to do it. I think it's going to be a party down in the Low Country, have a great time with the shrimp broil, my friends. And I think they are going to be walking away with all 3 of Patriots points. Finally, we are going to go with the Super League, where we have the Tampa Bay Sun, who we did not talk about them in this match, where they get a draw with another Florida Derby. I feel like they always play Fort Lauderdale. I know they play each other like 4 times, but I feel like this is the 7th time they've played each other, and it's yet another draw. And Carolina coming out with a win in their last match. These are 2 teams that are truly on the ascent, but only one of them can walk away with all 3, where they could share it. John, what do you think?
Leaning Tampa Bay here. I think both of these teams are kind of coming off of results where you feel like, yes, they got points, but they weren't really clicking offensively. Carolina's real strength was the combination play of Ashlyn Merrick and Riley Baisden on the right. Tampa Bay is set up to shut that down. They've been running with this kind of off-balance formation where Paige Almendarez plays pretty low at left back, and they let Jordan Zaid get upfield. If you're already hedging against the left, you're shutting down what Carolina does best. I also don't think the Ascent are as organized as Fort Lauderdale. I think Tampa Bay is going to have a better time in possession, a better time creating chances. So, hey, yeah, leaning Sun.
Ryan?
I picked a draw for this one. What stood out to me is that these teams have scored in each of their last 4 games, so I do feel like we'll be on the cards for a really high-scoring fixture. So both teams score, but it ends all square.
Phil?
I've got Carolina in this one. I particularly what I like about their game against Lexington coming into this game against Tampa Bay is just that they were able to create chances. So if they can find a little bit more fluidity, I do think that they can be dangerous. And again, nobody else picked them. So I'm finding my gaps here.
This is gonna kill me every time we do predictions, man.
Yeah, I'm gonna see if I can game the prediction table.
Well, I mean, I would prefer you didn't, honestly. Just to be honest. I want to go with the Sun here. I like what Tampa Bay are doing right now. I've been kind of on this train that I think the Sun might end up being the end of the season champions. They just feel like they have that about them. It's not really something I'm willing to like just stamp and be like, yes, I absolutely believe this. But they are one of the teams that I just get the feeling about. And Carolina, as much as their 2-1 win impressed me against Spokane, Lasses at Spokane, like they're not great. I don't know how I feel about it. I need to see them do it against a better team personally. I went with the Sun.
We've got lasses and lads covered.
I was going to say lads and lads.
Any final USL thoughts? Because I have one.
Fire away.
I'm going to stick with the Super League. If she keeps playing like she's doing, Hamid is getting my easy MVP vote right now. She has been awesome. What she does off the ball is incredible. And you're going to struggle to find a pure striker of the ball across the Super League. What she is able to do is just awesome. If she can just keep this trajectory going, she's probably getting my vote.
Don't hate it. Don't hate it. Depends on the final table, honestly, and how Fort Lauderdale ends up faring.
Yeah. What about y'all? Any final USL thoughts?
Texoma coming out today. This is a team that I had some real doubts about. Obviously, we were mixed at the end of the show with the League One preview. Ozzy Ramos is a player that's really going to add solidity in the midfield for them. Didn't see that coming. Davy Mason, they badly needed a left wing back. He's the guy who can do it. Interesting squad there and a lot of League One experience. I'm excited to see them play.
Anybody else? All right. Well, let's go ahead and let's do some final thoughts of the night. John, I want to go ahead and kick it to you.
Yeah, I'll start with plugs. Go check out Backyard and everything. I'm writing a ton there. We've got a new USL Championship specific pod, which I think is really good. So, well, I think the beauty of the USL show is we talk about everything. We talked about a fight. We talked about the Super League, League One. Diggy, if you want the championship specific, I think this league is great. Peyton Gallagher, who calls games for League One, is doing unreal production work. So, yeah, check that out.
Ryan?
Yeah, the Formula One season kicks off down in Melbourne this weekend, so very excited to have that back. It's supposed to rain, and we have like 6 rookies on the grid, so it could be a very chaotic start to the year. Races at midnight, so it leads into basically right when you are done watching USL on Saturday, you can have F1 to kick off your Sunday.
A-League is also back on ESPN Plus, and it has been a sicko watch for me. It always is, but it's officially back, and I'm loving it.
We're talking like Australian A-League?
Yeah.
Good for you, man.
Liam Rose currently playing his trade down there.
Again, welcome back.
Yeah. I am similarly looking forward to F1 this weekend, but I was very wrapped up in the traders. For anyone speaking of non-plug things, I was very invested in that. So no spoilers or anything, but that is it is the best show in reality TV at the moment for competition reality show watchers. And then I was very ill last week for kind of the first time in like 3 or 4 years. And so I was watching a lot of stuff. And one thing that I did is I rewatched The Big Short. That movie is so good. And I will fight anyone who says otherwise. I love that movie. So anyways, it is, I think partially because I had a fever, I was like, this makes perfect sense to me. I was like, I totally understand the housing crisis now. But given the climate, I was like, it makes sense. Yeah. Why don't I watch this as it happens again?
Phil, honestly, this kind of goes into my final thing. When you posted that you were getting sick on Blue Sky, it was around the same time like I started getting a little bit warm, a little bit sniffly and all this stuff. I was like, we just cannot stop being kindred spirits. Yep. It can't stop. We had our me doing band director things, of course. We had our music assessment where we had to go in front of like judges and they just tell me everything that's wrong with what I do. It's not stressful at all. And so when I saw like your post, like I felt like crap, and we were about to go on stage in like 2-3 hours, and I was just like, this is not where I want to be physically. And it is what it is. The anxiety was done, and we got it done with. I got home at 7:30 and just slept. Like I just got home and just crashed. Was it sick? Was it adrenaline? Yes, it was a little bit of both. So we survived though, and that's all that matters. So, yeah. John, it looks like you have something to say.
Well, I just realized that Top Chef is back this week. And
yes, tomorroay.
I cannot wait.
Or wait,
Thursday. Thursday, I think. But like USL back, whatever, cool, fine, cool. Top Chef, that's my sport.
God love. All right. Well, if no one else has anything, we do appreciate you all so much for listening. To our patrons, thank you so much for supporting us. Also, go check out Equipped Studios for some nice, cheap, fully custom, wonderful quality kits. And as always, thank you so much for watching us. Here is Alan's voice.
Thank you for watching another episode of the USL Show.
The USL Show is now proudly part of the Protagonist podcast family. Please go to protagonistsoccer.com to check out more work. Thanks for stopping by, and we'll see everyone again next time.